Welcome, everybody. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor here. And this is our CapSTAT, one of our sessions where we bring together government agencies and sometimes private entities as well to make a deep dive in public safety or just general operations or human services, you name it, issues in the District of Columbia. So today we're talking about rats, and more specifically how we abate rats, prevent rats, manage trash, and generally rid our city of rodents. So this is a session where the residents of the District of Columbia will be able to follow. I want to thank you in advance for your preparation for today's session. We have a, I'll leave it at that. And then we're going to turn, I know that Jenny and her team and the city administrator have been working to prepare us for RatSTAT. I'm sorry, for CapSTAT on rats. And all right, I broke my own rule. No laughing about rats. So you have an agenda before you. This is a free-flowing discussion. The materials in front of you are generally should be thought of as a guide, and then we'll move on from there. And we have an hour, and then we'll have an hour and a little bit of change to have follow-up discussion. So let me turn it over to CA and Jenny Reed to get started.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And let's just go right to the deck, and we're going to move through the data quickly just to set the context and then get to some discussion about different recommendations that we have on the table, and we can talk about the efficacy of those recommendations and what we might miss or what we might need to expand on in that discussion. So let me turn over to Director Reed.
Great. Thank you, City Administrator. So looking at slide 3, we're going to talk a little bit about what are rats in the district. So we thought it'd be helpful to provide just a quick background. So rats in DC are Norway rats. They require food, water, and a place to live. They primarily make homes in burrows. They like green space. They like older infrastructure, so older buildings with nooks and crannies that they can get into. They survive off food waste, trash, and pet waste, and so they thrive in areas where we have poor sanitation management and an excess of food waste. And we really have sort of 2 areas that we're focused on today when we talk about rats. We have abatement strategies where we are used to exterminate rats, and then we have sanitation strategies where we try to limit the amount of food waste that rats can get to live off of. So that's a quick overview. Now we're going to jump into the data. Right now in DC, we primarily treat rats through a complaint-based system, and so residents can call 311 in order to request rodent inspection and abatement from the Department of Health. And so this chart shows you 2 snapshots, really looking at the total volume of calls into 311 over the last 4 fiscal years for rodent abatement. And what you can see is that we've just had a huge spike, particularly in FY17. We had more than 5,000 calls for rodent abatement. This is a more than 130% increase since FY15. We also see that calls tend to spike in the summer months and in the early fall when the weather is a little bit warmer.
So Karima, is there anything that we've changed about how people can report, anything about the system that has changed?
The only thing we've added is in June, right when we made the announcement, I think it was June 21st.
Someone hand the mic.
Text to 911 is available. So we have seen calls being, or requests for rat abatement through text to 911.
Okay, so the only thing about our system is the addition of text to 911 that's changed.
Right.
Okay.
In better system performance, so we have less call drops. So we are likely receiving more calls to 311 because people are actually able to get through and make their complaint, in addition to using text to 311 and just other channels to report.
Right. And that goes right along with having more calls available. This past year, we added the 28 new 311 call takers. So there are more calls that are being handled at a shorter page and not on hold as long. So,
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So when we want to then break this down by ward, this chart shows you the total volume of requests by fiscal year by ward. You can see that the requests are really concentrated in the city's most densely populated neighborhoods. So in wards 7, 8, and 3, where we tend to have more not vacant, but we have more open space, more land, less density, we see fewer requests than in areas of like 1, 4, 2, and 6, where we have a lot of heavy commercial corridors. So now we get into what the abatement process looks like. And here for slide 6, I want to turn it over to Dr. Nesbitt to walk us through DOH's process for abatement. DOH is our main agency for rodent abatement in the city.
Correct. So to clarify and to begin, we do abatement on public space. We do not access private property. So when you're looking at this, just have that caveat in mind. So we may get requests from 311 about people having issues in their private residence, but we do not access the private residence. We will look at the space surrounding that area.
But you do private yards.
To a certain extent, yes. What we do is we will get a call that comes in to 311. There are 2 different class of employees currently at the Department of Health, our pest control exterminators and our code enforcement officers who will be dispatched in response to that 311 call. What typically happens is that they are dispatched separately in terms of how they complete their task. They all have a certain number of properties that they are required to assess daily. In response to those complaints, they go to the property, apply rodenticide where appropriate into what's called a burrow, which is the home that the rodents live in. That's how we gauge the significance of a problem in any given area, not necessarily based on the volume of 311 complaints that we get from that area. For us, the number of burrows is a greater indicator of the problem. The rats tend to ingest this poison just through their daily habits that they have, and most of the rodents actually die living in the burrow, so they don't tend to die above ground, creating a visual problem that is not appealing for our residents. The second class of employees, the code enforcement officers, look around the area, and the pest control exterminators tend to have the capacity to do this as well, and then have some conversations with the complainant about what they believe is precipitating or causing the problem or the reason why the rodents prefer to live in that area in the first place. But the code enforcement officers are the ones who actually can write the tickets if there is a TRAS violation causing the major issue. And as you can see there, the fine schedule, et cetera. This chart here around the 311 request and our closing of the request, this is not really reflective of the response times that the staff actually has in the closing of the tickets. What actually happens is that most of our requests are responded to in far more than 14 days. That tends to be reflective of when they actually enter the data into the system. So, for example,
Far more or far less than 14 days?
Sooner
Or
longer?
Sooner.
Sooner.
Yes, we get there
All right.
sooner than the 14
What is
days. If you
what's your
look at
time?
this, the data is not the best.
Okay.
So we have some instances where we go out on the same day of the complaint or the very next day of the complaint. And then we go back and we look at the area within 14 days. But we may take up to 2 weeks or 3 weeks to actually close a ticket in the 311 system because we have to manually sit down at a desk and close the ticket. And these are the same folks who are out in the field. So they may wait until a number of tickets are accumulated and then go in. And they have handwritten notes about what they observed on the property, et cetera. So one of the tickets that we pulled, the issue was reported to 311 on October 26th. They went out and the work was actually completed by, November 8th, for example, and it's not actually entered into the 311 system to be officially closed until November 11th. And there's a series of things where you look at that where that lag time could even be the issue is closed on the 8th, but it's not entered into the system until the 15th or even later.
What's the process for follow-up once you go out and do an abatement?
Well, it depends. Some issues are very minor. People call, a number of people call, and you get out there and there's 3 or 4 burrows or no burrows actually on their property. The rodent is living completely somewhere different. different. So there's no follow-up to be done on that property. Or you see burrows.
Well, I meant follow-up when you have found a burrow
When
and
you
treat it.
right, so when you find a burrow and you treat it, you go back and you see that the number of burrows in that area are decreased, and they may have to go back and apply multiple treatments. Sometimes I think it's like a week or so, Gerard, 30 days between treatments until the issue is reduced significantly. With a large parcel of land like DuPont Circle, we've been working that space for about a year. Yeah.
For the system that you guys are using that has the manual entry, is there a possibility of adopting an electronic system so the data entry can more accurately reflect?
Yes. So we are looking into a couple of solutions. It's actually just the 311 Salesforce tool, right? That's what we use. Yeah. So we're looking at a couple of solutions that could be used with a handheld device, a smartphone, an application that could be developed where they can actually close the complaints in the field or give updates to the complaints in the field if this is going to be the method of tracking whether or not we are compliant or responsive in a significant number of time. Whereas we have relied upon the staff being able to track, in a number of ways that they have actually gone out on assignment, been given 12 cases that they need to look at, and then doing surveillance in that area for other issues. Thank you. Surveillance in that area for other issues, and then on their way back to the office, being able to look out in the community for other parts of the neighborhood that they may see where there is an issue proactively between the neighborhood, the 12 sites that they have been assigned to for the day. And in their route back to the office for their proactive surveillance that they're assigned. So if this is the primary mechanism that we're going to look at in terms of closing a case within 14 days, we really do need to have some kind of tool. And that tool may need to be expanded because we need to capture the 30-day follow-up, et cetera, beyond that as well.
So I think two things, and I think we can talk about it when we get to the recommendation section. One is I think this is going to be a critical measure of performance adherence to the SLA. So if we can automate that and be faster, yes. And second, I'm interested in the SLA the duration, the 14-day issue. But I want to get through DPW and DOEE's process, and when we get to recommendations around abatement, let's talk about what we should do there.
Okay.
What's the size of our force?
We have 8 pest control exterminators, 4 code enforcement officers, 2 supervisors, and then another 2 staff assistants that do help with some of the data entry, follow up on some of the complaints, and then 1 program manager.
And has that changed, that level of staffing changed? Has that level of staffing changed in recent years?
It has not. So we're looking into some things, and we have some recommendations about increase of staffing, but also cross-training or dually posting the position so that there is a combination of pest control responsibility as well as code enforcement, so that you're not dispatching 2 separate individuals to a complaint, that individual can do both abatement and enforcement on site.
I thought I recommended increasing the staff.
Yes, last year, and we are working the numbers for that to put forward.
Is that funded?
It is not funded. It was not funded in FY18, but we are
Why not?
drafting the request. It wasn't put forward as an enhancement, primarily because we need to figure out the combining of the 2 positions.
Okay, so I want. Oh, let me understand
Correct.
this. So I said let's enhance it, but it didn't get enhanced.
Correct.
Okay, so let's make sure we revisit that.
Yep.
Okay.
So another way that we do enforcement in the district is through solid waste violations. And looking at slide 7, you can see this is a process map for DPW's inspection of violations. Now, DPW doesn't do abatement for rats, but they help control one of the main food sources. And they have a slightly different method of how they do this. And so I want to turn it over to Director Shorter to walk us through that.
Thank you. So many of you know our solid waste education and enforcement program inspectors. Our inspectors are about 20, well, as you can see, 25 inspectors and 3 inspectors that specifically focus on environmental crimes. These inspectors are the DPW, DC government personnel that you see in staking out public litter bins, staking out neighborhoods when there is a report of illegal dumping. We use them in a number of ways, and they have the authority to issue citations as well as warnings. They are also the district government personnel that go to community meetings and make sure that the public is informed about their responsibility to keep the city clean. And so in terms of inspections, the way that we organize sweep is in footprints, as you could see on the slide. Each inspector has a specific geographical area in the city that they're responsible for. Within that area, all the businesses, the ANCs, the residents in that business know that inspector fairly well, and that inspector is responsible for, again, education and enforcement.
And Chris, how does the sweep inspector interface with the DOH abatement person when the sweep inspector sees or comes upon a rat issue?
Many of the personnel have been working together for years, and so the process isn't formal. It's more of an informal communication that happens. Often they're talking about bad actors, they're talking about restaurants, they're talking about locations that are of primary concern, and the determining who issues the fine is not something that, again, is formal. I think there's some improvement that could be made there.
And there are two different fine structures, right? So if sweep issues a fine, that's a lower fine than if DOH issues a fine, and it matters with respect to where they might overlap is on a rat problem, a rat issue.
That's correct.
All right. So that's one thing that we've noted in looking at this that we want to try to get some greater alignment on is when we're issuing citations for the same violation that they be the same amount.
Why do there need to be inspectors at DOH and inspectors at DPW?
Good question, Shannon.
We don't refer to them I guess from our perspective, they haven't necessarily been inspected. Well, ours used to be at DPW. That's one, I guess, the answer. That's where they came from. So I have staff that used to be at DPW. I have staff that used to be at DCRA, and then they eventually came to the Department of Health. So a lot of my health regulation folks were previously at DCRA. So there are some of these legacy programs where some of the functions partially remained in another agency. They haven't really typically been considered inspectors where they are dispatched for some other purpose related to sanitation, except for the express purpose of going out and issuing an enforcement ticket for something that our abatement or our pest control exterminators have actually seen or observed, which is why I think moving aggressively to combine the functions would give us some enhanced workforce for abatement and then the issuance of the enforcement piece. That doesn't necessarily mean that if DPW is out and they see an issue related to litter or trash that hasn't yet progressed
So I guess what is stopping your abatement person from issuing a ticket? Is it something about the job description?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is the sole
I got it.
issue.
And I'll add, just so we don't move too quickly in merging any teams here.
Well, I'm not taking your staff. I'm just doing my folks.
I don't want to
Well,
take yours.
let's get to the end of the discussion and
But the
then
point-
we'll
no.
decide about that, won't we?
that what you'll see in a future slide really is that the type of citations that are issued by sweep inspectors are just wide ranging, right? So we're writing all kinds of citations around cleanliness, around litter control, damaging litter bins. So it really runs the gamut, and so there is a definite sort of difference in scope in terms of what the DPW sweep inspectors are responsible for versus what our abatement team personnel.
Got it. Okay.
And slide 8 just highlights exactly what the director was just saying. There's a lot more capacity at DPW, and they have a broader range of what they can issue citations for. So they issue many, many more than DOH.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about DOEE.
DOEE. So DOEE manages our complaints about pet waste, and slide 9 shows you a map of where in FY17 pet waste complaints overlaid with rat hotspots. Pet waste is a source of food for rats, and so the more that we have,
Microphone, so that everybody.
the more that we have around the city, the more food for rats that we have. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Wells to walk us through this process.
So DOE's relationship to pet waste has to do with water quality and runoff, and that's how we get involved with that. And so that's also how we expend funds, is because we have funds for stormwater management, cleanliness, and that. So 311 call comes in, it's routed to us. We keep a database of the pest waste complaints. And then if someone, a lot of people are asking for signs to say, you know, don't let your dog poop here, then we will provide the funding for those signs to DDOT. The DDOT's the one that puts signs in public space. And so in tree boxes and elsewhere.
It's off. Let's give them a new mic or turn that one on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with DDOT, they put the signs out. They also make the signs. And then also, then if it's an enforcement issue, then we send it over to DPW, to their sweep team, especially if it's in public property. There is some concern that if it's a private property issue, it goes to DOH. But
So what is the breakdown between the public and the private? It seems like I used to hear a lot more about violations of picking up after your pet in public space. Anecdotally, to me, it seems like those complaints have gone down. Is that the case? It's not? Okay.
And there's no entity that has any enforcement authority over that. Director Wells would like for me to have that. I would not.
Julie.
And yeah, so we decided Julie mutually here to this afternoon.
But how would you how do you enforce
thank
that?
You. I don't know.
Okay.
That's why I would like to not.
Okay.
But I also think that one of the things that we get requests for, and I think that would be a facilitator of it, is that there are only certain parts of our city that have the signs and the boxes where people who are walking their dogs who don't bring their own bags actually can pick up bags in public space. And that would probably help reduce some of the issues that people see out in the community and then want us to do something about it or pick up after dogs who haven't been picked up after. So one of the things that we've talked about is how do we help put more of those boxes that a lot of apartment communities have. Some of the bids are putting up independent of the government posting any of those. How do we blanket our community with more of those bags for people to pick up after their pets when they're walking them? And that might help to reduce some of the presence of the pet waste and thus some of the complaints.
Do we have a sense of how much is on in public space and how many of the complaints are on private space?
Well, it's the people who live in non-densely populated neighborhoods where people are walking their dogs and they kind of go in their yard and the space between their yard and the sidewalk, and they simply don't pick up after them. And so then when they're walking in their own sort of space around their house and in their neighborhood, they're the ones who are asking us why we can't do anything about it. And when we kind of go in those neighborhoods, we realize that they don't have, at certain spaces and places in their neighborhoods, they're not canvassed with those same bins as you would see in some of the densely populated areas where the apartment and condo communities are more prevalent, or the communities we would define them as more livable and walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods where the bids are probably helping to support the investment of those types of resources.
Okay.
Are the bids doing these pet waste receptacles, bags? Are we doing that in downtown?
So, not in the downtown DC bid. We don't have such a big dog waste problem because we don't have tons of people living downtown. But out of the adjacent bid, the Mount Vernon Triangle.
Is yours on?
Yeah.
Okay, so just talking to it. Okay.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I know our adjacent bid, the Mount Vernon SID, has a lot of residents, and so they do provide dog waste receptacles.
Okay.
In the work I've been doing with the pet waste manager at DOEE, she's commented that anecdotally where they post a sign, people, instead of picking up, actually change the route they walk the dog. And so they'll post a sign, and then a neighbor around the corner says, I need a sign now. And then, so you're starting to see concentrations of signs without the problem actually being solved. So question about whether the sign itself is an effective outreach tool to change this behavior.
My response would be that it's not, just from what I observe. And the most effective thing is peer pressure, neighborhood pressure, and we can talk about that a little bit more. Anything else on that, Tommy?
No, except for it does look bureaucratic how these complaints come through, and I could see frustration with the community
Right.
of having this layer in between, and it does slow down response time.
So when people are calling, though, about pet waste, you get the call at 311, Karima. It goes over to DOEE. What is the expected outcome? How do you close that out in 311?
So we don't ever get. So for pet waste, 311 does not enter it into our system. So there's not a service request entered. We literally just turn it over to DOEE
Okay.
and they put it in their system. So it doesn't turn around and get closed out with us.
Okay. So then what do you do?
Yeah. So, well, we keep the database, and then depending on what the request is that if they're asking for a sign, we refer that to DDOT. If it's in a public space, we refer it to DPW. In terms of closing out, I don't know if there's a routinized way that it gets closed out, because we've got listed about 500 open pest waste complaints, and I can't tell you that whether they're, how to
How they
confirm
got
that they're
resolved? All right. Who's
closed
doing
out.
public education around pet waste?
We do public education around pet waste, and again, it's from the aspect of clean environment. It's not so much about rats and such, and so that's how we use the funds, our watershed funds.
Okay. All right.
In terms of peer pressure, Mayor, we've seen on a number of listservs people utilizing our security camera footage to sort of rat their neighbors out, if you will, about not picking up their, So just sort of one of the only other thing I wanted to point out is in terms of enforcement or ticketing, we've seen a lot of tenants ticketed for trash issues, not the building owner, in fact, and the building owner is the person responsible for sort of rat abatement, for all tenants. And so I think that there's an issue with, and we don't see a lot of these tenants sort of doing anything once they get fined to kind of clean up their act. We think that possibly if you got the building operator involved, there would be a little bit more expediency in sort of cleaning up their trash area. So I think there's a sort of uneven incentive.
Okay.
So one of the other things that we're doing to abate rats, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Nesbitt, is a partnership with the National Park Service to really do heavy abatement in public parks. The list you see here was the focus for FY17, I believe, and they're still going to some of these places, but I think the focus has shifted to the mall and the memorials for 18. But I wanted to turn it over to Dr. Nesbitt to talk about this special effort.
Yeah, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. It's self-explanatory. I want to get to recommendations, but we couldn't abate federal property because we can't access federal property without permission. So we finally were able to get an agreement with the National Park Service to access their property. And they cover basically the overtime costs. So we only go into the properties on Saturdays. And we only go to the properties that continue to have a challenge. So as I mentioned, DuPont Circle has made tremendous progress. And so now we're going to some of the other properties where issues remain significant, which are the mall areas and some of the other wider green spaces. And so they're all listed here, and if people have questions about it, I can speak about it further.
But you've seen success, I know, in DuPont
Yes.
significantly,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And talk about what that.
So what that looks like for us, again, is not the volume of calls into 311, because we still get calls into 311, but it's the number of boroughs. I can't remember exactly how many when we started. 150 boroughs when we first started at DuPont Circle, and now it's down to 11. So it's a significant amount of progress.
Yep.
Dr. Nesbitt, I'd love to recommend that you expand that partnership around some of the National Park Service properties, because many of our bids have agreements with Park Service to maintain. Ellen Jones, who's behind you guys, personally works with the Park Service to do road and abatement in Franklin and some of the other parks in the downtown DC bid. So I think you could get exponential growth on this if you partner with some of the bids in the city.
Okay, thanks.
So you already have that agreement separately with Park Service
We
for
have an
Franklin?
agreement, yes, for the parks in the downtown DC area, and there are about 11 or 12 of them.
Okay.
Some are on this list already.
Okay. And are we seeing any activity kind of in the northern or outside of the core of the city? Commissioner, you're from 4D. I'm not sure which of the parks is closest to you. Circle Parks.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I can speak as much to noticing it in the parks. I walk my dog in the parks, and I haven't necessarily seen them as much. I will say when I moved up to Petworth about 4 years ago, I said to myself, this is fantastic. I've moved north of the rats.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, what we've seen in the last year really is rats coming to Petworth. And I didn't see them for the first 3 years. The 86-year-old grandmother lives next door to me, who's always my touchstone. She said, she had never seen rats there in the 40 years she's been there. So, we know there's lots of reasons for that, but it's a new thing, and I'll if we have a little time, I'll talk about some kind of ways we might approach it when it's a block type situation with row houses, which I think is a little bit of a different situation.
Okay. Commissioner, any National Park Service issues in your area?
We've identified a number of locations in ANC 6B, particularly over at 6th and Pennsylvania Avenue. We have talked to how we might be able to assist the National Park Service. There is some correlation between the individuals who are suffering from homelessness that tend to be in that area and are leaving food in the area, that promotes rats to find a home there because it's a national park and it's hard for us to do anything about it. And besides to help them find permanent housing. So it's not related, but it's definitely, there's a correlation between that and where the rats are burrowing.
Okay. Got it.
So our last item to talk about before we talk about recommendations on abatement is the predictive rat modeling that DOH is using. So on slide 11, this shows you a map of where predicted probability of rodent infestation is. This model has been built with help from Octo in the lab, and it uses that 311 data, but then adds a lot of other variables onto it to help predict where DOH should target abatement. One thing to note is with all the 311 calls we get, the Department of Health only finds boroughs less than half the time, about 46% of the time. So there's a lot of calls that they're getting that they're spending time going out and looking for boroughs, but not necessarily finding them. And so with this model, we're trying to, help them sort of figure out where should they focus efforts. And it does align to where we're getting a lot of the 311 calls, but we've found that population density, building age, and zoning also tend to be really strong indicators for where we're finding boroughs. And so right now, the model's been built and DOH is field testing it to see how accurate and helpful it can be. But it's DOH, I think, shifting away from some of the reactionary calls that you get from 311 and that actually don't always tell you where rats are. And Dr. Nesbitt, I don't know if you want to...
So it's a
You
little
want to
bit...
jump in, Henson?
Let Dr.
Okay.
Nesbitt.
No, you could go ahead. I've talked a lot.
I'm Dr. Kathy Heinsohn with American Pest, and one thing that's missing from this slide, I think, you have your top predictors here, but there's a rat population that is always in the sewers and in the metro tunnels, and tidal influx of the Potomac is going to force them out. And you don't have to see burrows to find rats, but when you get a tidal influx, like in Georgetown, you're going to see rats. Or if you get flooding from rains, heavy rains, you're going to see rats. And it really doesn't matter where you are in the city. They're going to come out of the sewers and the metro tunnels. And that's true of New York City as well, and any major metropolitan area.
Okay.
So one of the things that we talked about with the predictive modeling piece is that the challenge with creating a proactive approach is that when when one of the focuses being responsive to constituent complaints that come in through 311, and you're always going to dispatch a resource to close a 311 case, we're going to spend half of our time and resources being responsive to a constituent complaint that comes in, for which we have demonstrated we're never going to see anything. So when we have a predictive model that tells us that these are the places that we should proactively survey and see work, we're still going to be left with being dispatched to a resource where we're not going to see anything. Now, here's why even doing a proactive approach doesn't decrease that necessarily, is because most of the people who are calling because they saw the rodent run past them from somewhere else where the rodent lives, right? And that's where we have to go and do the treatment. So even if we decrease the population, you're still going to call when that person is going to take out their trash, getting out their car, whatever it might be, and they see the rodent run past them. So it's always going to be a dual approach. The predictive modeling is fine, but as Dr., I don't want to mispronounce your last name, Heinston has already mentioned, there are things like population density, building age, zoning, the sewer population of the rodents, which Gerard always gets on us about, leave those rodents down there alone. But the rodent population in the sewers, temperature fluctuations, all of those things are great predictors that we know about. But they do a good job of, after they finish their 12 assignments for the day, spending time in those neighborhoods and figuring out what they can proactively abate before those calls come in. So that a degree of that is happening to a certain extent now, but we're going to still spend time and resources because of our natural attentiveness in the city to constituent complaints. So it begs the question of how do we educate the constituents on, you might see it in your area, but the problem may be somewhere else. And the mayor has talked to folks about this before, but what do we do about that on a larger scale?
Well, I think too, but what is that? So if we're using if we think that this model is reliable, and so we should talk about how we test it to see if it's reliable, then what's the schedule? In Melinda's world, we call it proactive inspections. So what is the proactive schedule for rat abatement or prevention?
Yeah. So we have two things that we do. We have a Tuesdays, we do the blitz on Tuesday. We do the blitz on Tuesdays, and then we do education on Fridays every week.
That's enforcement?
Well, the Friday is not so much the enforcement, it's the community canvassing and education that we do for people to get them to do better with their trash and a host of other things. So we already have those two things that are in place. I think when we have the change in the workforce, that gives us a little bit more bandwidth, that blitz will get bigger on Tuesdays.
So
and
the
may
Tuesday
have
blitz is an abatement blitz?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, speaking of recommendations, so we wanted to.
Can I just stop you before you move there? Because we didn't talk about weather, and we didn't talk about the seasons of the year as to what we, recognizing what we see or the best times to work on these issues. Do you have anything to add to that, Kathy? Dr. Heinzen?
Yes. Actually, one thing you should know about rats, Norway rats in particular, is they have to have water daily. Must have water daily. And that's unlike other rodents. Most other rodents get their water metabolically through the foods they eat. But rats have to have water. So it stands to reason that in the summer months, they're going to be thirstier, and you're going to see them above ground more often, running around. trying to search for water. And of course, they have a tremendous reproductive drive. Males will travel 100 feet. We were discussing this earlier, a city block. And they're searching for both water and for mates. They're very prolific, so every 6 weeks or so, you're going to have a litter of 8 to 12 pups that in another 6 weeks are going to be reproductively competent.
That is
So
prolific.
you see how exponentially, especially in the summer months, the higher the temperature, the faster those rates of metabolism and reproduction increase. Within bounds, but
Right.
yeah, it's always faster in the summer months. They're also mammals, so they're going to seek warmth. So in the winter, you're going to have residents and probably commercial entities also seeing them inside because they have to have warmth as mammals. So those are two things, the need for daily water and the warmth as mammals that you need to consider. Also, just interesting, and I'm sure Dr. Nesbitt is aware of this, the reason that burrows are dusted is as the rodent grooms itself and licks the pesticide, they, unlike a lot of other mammals, cannot burp. And so this
Poison.
gas builds up, and it's not a pretty sight, but that's how their demise is met. So, because they can't burp. So that's another strategy. That's a weakness on their point. They have a lot of strong points going for them, but
Right.
but, yeah.
So is it like an urban myth that warmer winters have led to an increased population?
No, that would be true.
Okay.
Yeah, but you always have a pretty warm ambient temperature in the sewers and with the metros. Now, as I rode the metro in just a little bit ago, I was on one of the newer cars, and they were showing the slideshow about how they're cleaning up the metro tunnels and so on. That's going to make a huge impact on the rodents if they stay at it,
Okay.
and hopefully they do.
Okay.
And when it comes to abatement, then, is there a season that is better for abatement, or does that not matter? You have to do it all year round?
It's all year.
And
in the Mid-Atlantic, it would be all year.
And is there like an industry standard for follow-up between abatements?
It depends on the approach you take. So, as she was mentioning with the burrows, if you're baiting the burrows with a pesticide that will be ingested, the pellets, then you probably want to close up those burrows also, and then come back in 7 to 10 days to see if that burrow has opened up, to see if there are flies present indicating a dead carcass, or if there's a carcass present. Same with dusting a burrow. Now, these are traditional standard abatement. There's new innovative things out there coming out. But the standard traditional things are the things that require 7 to 10 day follow-ups usually.
And our 30-day schedule now is just a person power issue?
No, it's to look at whether or not there is a decreased presence of the burrows. So we dust, right? What do we do? Yeah, we dust and seal. Yeah, dust and cover.
And the thing is with the dust, if it rains later that day and the burrow hasn't been sealed, then that's a problem. The dust won't hold up.
Is cover and seal the same thing?
So if you cover the burrow, you're good. Yeah.
So are we talking about the different strategies to kill the rodents? Is this further in the presentation?
It's a recommendation to look at one different abatement method, which was dry ice. But there could be, I think there are others, and I think there's a pilot of one that NPS is using, but we're not using. Is that correct?
They are not yet using it. We had to.
Microphone.
I'm sorry.
And what it is tell me what it is. I can't remember.
So it's a sterilization
That's what it
product that would be considered a restricted use product in the district, and DOEE has made that possible. So you have to be a certified pest manager in the district in order to use it and get a waiver from DOEE. But all of that is taken care of now in order to use it. NPS had expressed an interest in being able to use it on their properties, and so now that's possible. We have gotten some estimates about adding it to our strategies here in the district, and so we're working those numbers in order to do it based on what Kathy has stated to us, and the travel patterns of rodents and all of that. You had, unlike the burrow, the rodenticide approach where you put it in the burrows, this one actually works with using trays, and you have to rely on the fact that the rodent will use this as a food source and go to the tray and use it as a food source, ingest it, and then ingesting this effectively sterilizes the rodent. And then within 6 months, it's supposed to have an increase, a decrease on the rodent population based on their reproduction.
Yeah.
And so,
So you could do both. So
Yeah,
you can have
you
the
can-
rodenticide and the sterilization.
and the sterilization,
Okay.
right? And the sterilization does not, produce carcasses about town. The major difference is that you have to place trays across town, and then so because of that, you have to have a good understanding of where your challenges lie and map out the rodent travel patterns, et cetera. So we had to do all of that analysis, calculate how much we need to purchase, and all of that.
Okay, so
we're working those numbers out.
rodenticide and sterilization. Any other ways to kill or reduce the population?
Yes. So you want to talk a little bit about the dry ice?
Yeah, a
and the
number of
challenge?
cities had started using dry ice to pretty good effect. Dry ice is dry ice will essentially uses carbon monoxide to
Dioxide.
Carbon
Dioxide.
carbon dioxide, and I'm head of an environment. Carbon dioxide
Although carbon monoxide would work too.
to kill them. And so what you do is you put it down the burrows, and they go to sleep and don't wake up. And one of the things about that is that it's very easy to administer, and it's very cheap. That it can be 50 cents a burrow, and the Harris Teeter across from our agency has dry ice. It's not hard to get dry ice. So we're looking at providing how-tos on our website to the bids, for the bids that would like to use dry ice, because I know that often you know where these burrows are as well. And
They actually are packaging it now, and it's labeled by EPA, and you can purchase the
so
dry ice.
we'll be putting out communications about how to do it, and it'll be how to, especially if they have packages now, we'll put out pictures of that too. Okay. But so we're informing folks that this is an alternative for them.
Okay. So there's nothing needs to be done from a regulatory point of view,
Not on dry ice.
not on dry ice. From DOH's administration point of view.
Well, we should not use it, right? That's still the prevailing.
No,
Yeah, that's changed.
That's changed.
Okay, great.
There was a concern that it was administering something that had not been through all the rigors of testing that EPA would go through, but that's been since put aside, and you can now use dry ice.
Okay. And so
At will.
is nothing stopping a private property owner from
That's right.
That is
from
correct.
identifying a bureau on his or her property and using
Exactly right.
any of these methods,
And that's why
except
we're putting-
rodenticide.
Except
Well,
for
there are rodenticides that only a licensed applicator can administer.
But dry ice is
That is
okay.
not.
Okay,
That's
got
right.
it. All right.
unless they buy it as the packaged material from the vendor that sells it as a rodenticide.
Then you have to be an
Then that would
applicator.
you would have to be
Okay.
licensed, yeah.
But that's why we're putting explanations out that you can just go to your corner store,
I
get some tongs, put
Okay.
it down a burrow, and so that we don't, and call it a day. Or so we stay away from the regulatory aspect
All right.
of that.
I like that. All right. So we have 3 methods that we
There's-
have. Another?
Yeah,
More,
I was
please.
just at the major trade association for it's called Pest World, where they have the yeah, it's kind of a funny name, where they have all the different products out, and everyone is now moving toward the digital sensing of where the rodents are, and then targeting them in different ways. And this is very big in Europe right now. Just to mention one, Dare had a huge display with their latest infrared eye that picks up where the rodent is, perhaps in a sewer line, perhaps elsewhere, and then in different ways they can be eliminated.
Okay.
So that's very much the latest.
Okay, and that's
technology.
just to help decide where to put the different materials to kill them.
Well, no, there's actually products that have already been developed that are in use in Europe that actually do go ahead and kill them when they see them in like sewer systems.
I got
So
it.
we
Okay.
brought, so we have a food safety and defense conference. We're going to change the name, but that's open to our food retail establishments. And so we actually had some vendors come here in October, and they previewed some of these products that could be used in our food retail establishments and in our sewer system. And I've had some preliminary conversations with Matt Brown. They should come to market in the U.S. next year. So we'll have some options for some of our food retail establishments who want to use products other than rodenticides that use some of these sensor-based products, some of the things that could be placed in sewer systems, municipal sewer systems, those types of things. So we'll have a few more things that we can explore in terms of the newer technologies that have already been deployed in Europe. They should come to market in the U.S. next year. But we've already exposed some of our food retail establishments to them.
So why would Europeans be more advanced in this thinking than we are, Tommy?
Why do you send me to all these places? We're trying.
Why does he get to go?
They have a much higher regulatory environment than we do.
Okay.
And so they are forced to think outside the box.
Okay.
And come up with things that are non-poisonous and non-targeted at anything but a rodent.
I got it. Kathy, do you want to add anything to what your members are thinking about in terms of trash management or?
Sure, I could. I think Natalie could also chime in here.
Okay.
But so in terms of the restaurant community, I mean, we, of course, work with DOH a lot, voluntarily and involuntarily sometimes. Because they're required as a business to have a contract in place with companies like Kathy's. But also in terms of overall management of this issue, knowing that food service is one piece of a much larger issue in terms of players and keeping everyone honest and accountable, the Georgetown bid did something that seems to work very well, that can be mirrored across the city in terms of other areas that have bids or don't have bids. But it's the idea where they work with the government agencies, they work with Park Service, they work with the businesses, they work with the citizen associations, right, and the ANCs to address the issue and keep their key constituent honest and accountable. So as issues arise, they come together as this task force, so to speak, to address the issue, work with the government, work with the particular agency that has enforcement to address it, and they've been pretty successful in Georgetown. I know that we don't necessarily have the luxury of having bids everywhere where we have communities that are developing with the food piece, the housing piece, livable, walkable, but it is a really good model. So in terms of talking with Joe Sternlieb as well, but I'm sure Natalie can speak to it given you're familiar with what most of the bids are doing. It seems to be a good program that could be mirrored, and I know that a lot of our restaurants work very well within this circle of cooperation to address this issue and deal with this one in particular.
Okay.
And it's one of the one of the pieces of the model in Georgetown that works well is they have an area where there's a shared compactor, and that is something that's worked well in other parts of the city even without bids. The challenge of having a shared compactor for
I don't think you're on.
You are just a little bit closer.
Okay. The challenge of using a shared compactor system is coordination amongst those businesses and coordination with the hauling companies. And one of the biggest issues for the restaurants and other private properties are the hauling services.
Right.
Huge challenges when the alleys are blocked and the trash haulers don't come, but the trash still gets put in the dumpsters, and then no matter what happens, they still have to put the trash out. So that causes this overflow. And so what some bids have found, so there was a project in the Golden Triangle really trying to bring the businesses together around a alley that was really, really problematic, and also working with the city, but especially working with having them work together is really important. But the whole issue of the shared compactors, which compactors are really effective, but it's really hard to figure out how to share those costs and coordinate.
Okay.
And that's one of the challenges.
So for the shared compactor that you're talking about, what kind of investment is it? Do you know for this particular one?
Well, the case that I'm familiar with, that actually amongst the businesses cooperating, their costs actually went down. I mean,
Okay.
it's cheaper to use a compactor because
Okay.
you have less hauling trips.
Right, but the
So it
initial
really
investment-
makes, and I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you
And
have
I
a
just know
sense,
that
Martin?
the
Okay.
issue was never what the initial investment was. It
Because
was
it was
about
overall.
that coordination.
I got it. Did you want to add, Martin, about the Barracks Row's experience?
Sure. We have looked at doing some of the shared compactors. The big challenge that we have is that there are a lot of upfront costs. There was a really great grant program that you guys had that covers some of the costs to purchase or lease the equipment, but it, to my knowledge, excluded the cost of site prep to do the concrete pad that the compactor has to sit on. It excluded the cost of leasing the space from a private property owner, and usually the things will take up at least 2 parking spaces in size. And so there were some things that were left out of that grant program that I think it would be very beneficial if it was possible to add that in. The other 2 things that I would jump in and note are that there's a very high correlation, at least what we noticed on Barracks Row, between the quality of alley paving and the quantity of rats that we encounter. On the back of
I'm sorry.
the-
I'm going to have your sound either go up
Sure.
or there we go.
Is this
Okay,
better?
That's better.
On the back of the 500 block of 8th Street, we had an alley that was in very poor condition. As a result, when the restaurant owners on the front side of that block would come out and they would spray down their trash containers and everything else, they would leave puddles that provided the water that the rats all needed, and the drainage was very poor. That alley was repaved about 2 years ago. Now it drains properly, and it's easier to keep it clean, and it's resulted in a very substantial decrease in the rat population for that particular block. So certainly, especially in areas with strong restaurant populations, I think that the quality of alley paving is actually very, very relevant to this particular issue. The last thing that I'll throw in is the Clean Team grants that we have through the Department of Small and Local Business Development are also a really critical element in helping to fight some of these problems, because it does help to go, especially with the trash haulers who are less than cautious when they are emptying bins. If we have clean teams, we're able to send people to go and pick up everything that didn't make it into the truck, and try and help to manage some of those issues as well. So I think that's another relevant component that is often overlooked.
Okay.
Can I just add one quick thing?
Sure.
With the compactors, another big issue has been the cost of powering them. And getting either where they are finding a way for PEPCO to get to wherever you site the compactors, that's been really challenging.
Okay, to get the initial hookup, not the
Right, and then
operations.
then
Okay.
again you have to figure out, well, who's going to be paying for it? How are you
Okay.
going to share that cost? I mean, I'm
Okay.
talking about the private cooperative.
For Martin, do any clean teams currently abate, and have they ever explored having that done?
I can't speak to all of the other clean teams. I know that with the one that Barracks Row has, they have not worked with rat abatement in the past. They work more with the prevention side by trying to just keep the streets and the alleys clean. But I think that that's something that if there were funding and training, I think that that would be certainly possible.
Mayor, can I add one more
Sure.
thing as we're closing out compactors? One other consideration also is the idea that there has to be a manager of that shared compactor. So it's usually a small business owner that has to kind of take the lead on, I'm going to collect the money, I'm going to be the manager of, and as we know with, capacity very thin in a small business as an operation, that's just something to consider as we explore more on the compactor side, to think about ways that maybe there's a designated manager versus having a small business operators raise their hand to say, yes, I'll be that manager.
All right, and couldn't we have a technology solution to that? If people can figure out how to share rides and private jets and all of that, let's kind of put on if there's a technology solution to all of it. But I think you're right. I think that we could probably play a role in the organization of that. But basically what we're talking about is sharing a ride. It's just the ride to the trash. And if we have a certain number of businesses that we made it easy for them to pay, schedule time, schedule pickup, then I think we have something going with that idea, Kathy.
Willingness.
Yes.
Right.
So let's make it easy for them to buy into a program. I think you all raised some key issues about that maybe we didn't think about with the initial grant program, the space and the power issue, and now the administration issue of it. How can we be helpful with that? Commissioner, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, one of the things we've been doing in ANC 6B is really using the settlement agreement, which is available, that's tied to an establishment's alcohol beverage license to good use. One of the things is that there's already existing provisions within DC law that requires that all establishments that produce food items, that they are supposed to dispose of it first by grinding it through the grinders. And we're putting that into our settlement agreements, because if the food goes down the grinder, less of it ends up in the trash as to feed the rats. And that's one of the things we're doing. The other thing we're doing is we have a number of establishments in the 400 and 500 block of Barracks Row that have agreed to install indoor trash rooms within that area, and we've agreed to help them in any way possible to offset those costs, either through additional seating capacity or other ways, so that they're not bearing the whole brunt of the cost of that.
Okay. What's been the feedback from the businesses, Martin, on the indoor storage?
The indoor storage is a much more challenging approach. Some of our businesses have basement space or other space that is otherwise not going to be utilized, and so it becomes easier for them to be able to put something in like that. But for someone who has leased a building that occupies 100% of the lot, where there isn't additional buildable space and there isn't a basement underneath it, if they're paying $40, $60, $80 a foot for a trash room that's 10 feet by 10 feet, that's expensive real estate. Mm-hmm. And so, that's one of the challenges that the restaurant community has had with, putting it into the settlement agreements, where there's always preferred to have indoor trash storage, is that some buildings are just structurally it's more feasible in some buildings than others. But certainly the ones that have done it, it requires a lot more training, and it's harder to get some of the entry-level employees to follow the right procedures. But once they can actually get things moving forward, for a lot of them, they've said that it's been very successful.
Okay. All right.
Can I just add one really quick
sure.
thing? Just how important it is to have the trash haulers as part of this conversation. They're so key to what is going on.
Okay. We should
Commercial
probably come back to talk. I agree with you. And let's figure out, how do we engage that conversation, team? Commercial trash haulers.
Well, so I think it's sort of two-phased in terms of contractors or third-party commercial haulers that are servicing restaurants and servicing businesses. There are standards. Sweep inspectors actually work with businesses to educate them, to even review contracts, to make sure that pickups are happening often enough during the week, and that there aren't any problems or complaints from the surrounding community. What I'd also say is that I've heard of really good examples where restaurants are actually working together and businesses are working together, where they combine or leverage resources and have a single vendor instead of multiple haulers coming into an alley to collect. A single hauler that comes in a timed, synchronized way to collect. And so where that's possible, we certainly encourage that kind of partnership and collaboration.
How can we encourage it more? How can we make it worth everyone's while? I mean, what ways? I liked what you said about we've seen agreements. Some agreements are better than others. Is there like a gold standard in agreements?
I think education.
Okay.
I think someone suggested many of these small businesses this is not their, they're in to sort of do a specific thing. And so from a government perspective, we can certainly do a better job educating, making sure that we give these examples, we highlight where partnerships are happening, but there is no regulatory framework.
Okay. So maybe we should just think about some carrots that may be a part of this discussion to encourage cooperation. Yes.
And I just
Kristen.
wanted to add on to one point that Lindsay made earlier about the tenant behavior. And I think that's what we find often within our populations of both multifamily and commercial tenants, is that we do want to partner with the district more on the education, because we can be fined and then that tenant still goes the next day and disposes of their pet waste in the inappropriate places. But I think what we found to be very beneficial, or what I heard from feedback from our members, was they loved the trash compactor tax incentive. That was legislation, I think it's been introduced several times, that in the initial introduction it only went for the purchase, but then it also in the later iterations went to rentals, so that it did aid, I think, in 50% reductions for the trash compactors. We know that's been a successful tool. And then as of late, I know someone else mentioned the grants. That was very attractive to our members, as they're continuously wanting to eliminate rats within their populations.
Okay.
So before we jump to trash, we did want to circle on the recommendations around abatement. And I think that there's a couple that we've sort of talked through about using different types of methods, and DOH is already piloting some of those, as well as looking at aligning the code or the fines between the two agencies for the different types of violations. One thing I did want us to talk about a little bit is there's an interest in reducing the SLA for the rodent abatement, and part of it could be around better electronic devices to allow for more accurate reflection of what DOH is doing, but there's also an interest in somehow expanding the staffing to be able to take a more proactive approach. We had suggested, potentially contracting with private pest controllers, but I know Dr. Nesbitt and her team have been working on something internally. And so I wanted a chance for us to talk about what's the best way to expand DOH's ability to cover a bigger footprint. And I wanted to turn over to Dr. Nesbitt to tell us what they've been working on.
Yeah, so I think we've already had this conversation during the session today, where we've talked about the conversion or combining the two positions as a way to increase the bandwidth, and the mayor's request that we be compliant with her edict from last year. So we'll definitely be attentive to those two things. I'd be a bit challenged with the request to go from a 14-day to a 3-day without any accurate data that has around that assessment and without clear definitions as to what the 14 days actually means in terms of if that is a closed case in the current system and what it actually means to close a case. Closing the case meaning the first visit out to the home or actually or neighborhood rather, or area of the complaint versus we no longer need to come to this area at all for service. So this whole definition of the SLA, if we're talking about the first response time at all ever being in 3 days, meaning closing something out from the 311 system, that may not be at all problematic for us versus this is no longer any treatment at all necessary. So I think there's some opportunity for discussion there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thinks that we can abate the issue completely within 3 days. What that is meant to say is that the first response to the complaint happens within 3 days with some percentage of accuracy, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, 85% of the time. Not the abatement is closed or that you never have to go back again. It is the first touch that I'm interested in.
Maybe touch treatment.
Yeah,
Treatment.
but even then, there's some challenge with that, and I think again we should continue for
we
discussion.
won't solve it today,
Yeah.
but I think we can all agree 14 days is too long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll get that down. Now, what we haven't talked about is we talked a little bit about it when we talked about dry ice, but we won't be able to go to every property for every complaint. Like that's probably out of the scope of what the government can do. But we know that private companies are working with private property owners every single day. So how else can we encourage private property owners to be a consistent part of the solution? You wanna talk about that, Kirsten?
Just going to add a point about the data. I think if you're utilizing the 311 data to show the concentration of areas, there's another point about education and informing those property owners that, listen, you are in a hot spot. Here are some alternatives that you may can implement within your building. They may not be aware that they're in that hot spot. So if that's just another avenue, I don't know if we've informed our members to call 311, so I don't know if your concentration of that 311 information is more residential than it is necessarily commercial, but particularly if we know those high density areas may be more within the bids in those areas, how can we utilize that data as another proactive resource to the businesses?
Got it.
If I may, landscaping makes a huge difference too, and that hasn't come up yet. One thing that I notice in the city in general is both commercial and residential properties tend to love pachysandra, ivy, and also junipers.
Yes.
And the rodents love
We all
to
have
burrow
competition.
around juniper roots. And so in your educational pieces to residents, I would stay away from those landscaping items if at all possible. And then it's not necessarily attractive. And I like to garden and beekeep with the best of them, but the best landscaping around a residential or commercial property is either concrete or pea-sized gravel at about 3 feet width around the perimeter of the building and 3 inches deep, because rodents don't like to burrow through that, and most insects and other pests don't like to burrow through it. So if you want to educate residents in that direction, that will help.
Just so Director Wells doesn't pass out. Is there anything?
I apologize.
Is there anything green that you can use? Any plant or deterrent? Is it just keeping it to grass, or is there anything?
Grass is fine, yeah, but I look at and see all these condo buildings with junipers and pachysandra and ivy, and they are great climbers, great burrowers, and love those things.
Pachysandra?
Pachysandra, yeah, Pachy.
So if they want to go green, just stick to grass. Is your
grass? Yeah. What you don't want is a bare space where they can burrow.
Well, remember, Director Wells, we pass out the wire mesh that our residents can still access through the Department of Health for free. So for our green space that we still have, people can get that and they can put it on top of their green space that they still have, and it will discourage some burrowing.
Well, in fact, I was just working with the condo from hell, and they had junipers all in front, and so we dug up and placed quarter-inch mesh all around the juniper and prevented the burrowing of the rats in that area.
Doc, didn't you make recommendations about types of plants that would be deterrents?
So we have in a mailer that Mr. Brown's team has created for us in terms of things that people shouldn't do and ways to prevent rodents on your property. We do provide some guidance around the types of plants to avoid, the type of green space you can still maintain, and it goes out with the distribution of the wire mesh. I think we also reinforce it in the video that we did with cable television, the district's cable television channel. That also includes some things around trash storage, the storage of pet food outside, making sure you have lid containers that seal properly. All of that guidance is there. So we do want people to still make sure that they take advantage of those types of informational materials. We did a mass mailing of that, I believe, to every home in the district about a year ago. And we can do that again next spring as people, or before the spring, as people are getting ready to garden and potentially replant things so that they're using things that are less friendly to the rodent population.
So we are tight on time, so I'm going to suggest that we move to the recommendations for oh, which page? 19 to page 19. 18.
Has them all combined.
Okay.
Sanitation and data.
So here, Mayor, we have a number of recommendations that we've put in an implementation timeline. Some are immediate, some within 30 days, and some within 60 days. I think for the immediate ones, generally, it's about piloting the use of dry ice or some other mechanism to exterminate the rodents. DOH working up a proposal for enhanced staffing and being able to think through how to reduce the SLA, what's the right SLA. Using the more technology in the enforcement, and then also considering use of a rapid deployment team to empty the high usage trash cans during the day. So we have a number of public litter cans, about 7,000, all along our major corridors. They fill up. DPW does pick them up once a day, but there are some using sensor technology that we know fill up more frequently than that. And so considering like a rapid response team that could go around the city and potentially pick it up before it gets too full. And I know Director Shorter wanted to. Okay. And then also for those public litter cans, having a scheduled cleaning and then washing down busy corridors or streets nightly and weekly. Within 30 days, we would look at submitting proposals to align the fee structures and staffing of code enforcement and solid waste inspectors between DOH and DPW. Develop a regular replacement schedule for our residential trash cans. We have about 200,000 of those across the city, and they are a big source of food for rodents.
What that just real quick, what that doesn't mean is a mass replacement of trash cans. What it means is some framework, some structure, policy where they are not useful or they have big holes in them, some way to be able to replace those as needed, and then have a replacement schedule that is around the useful life of the can itself. So that I don't want people to think that we're going to deploy 200,000 trash cans in the district in the next 60 days.
Right. Can I just say one quick thing? The bids actually do have an annual trash can replacement program where we do go around, do that assessment, and then replace cans and parts as needed. So in those
that's
areas
one
we're
that
You're
we'll
talking
look
about
at.
the street cans? Okay.
We also have we have compactors for some of our public trash cans. I think we have about 200 deployed, or 25 deployed across the city. And so the idea is to have DPW and the lab sort of work together to look for possible locations to put some additional compactors. These are tightly sealed garbage cans that rats can't get into to get food. In addition, we would look for a plan and timeline to add pet waste complaints and sign requests to 311 to try to streamline that effort. Right now, it's moved through 311, but it's not an actual complaint that you can register.
I'm still not sure what happens with the pet waste complaint. I don't think anything happens with it. So kind of moving it, I don't know what that accomplishes.
Would we consider moving the sign requests to 311, or is that, or maybe there's a...
I think we have to find something to do with it. Like, that's an input to me of a problem that can inform where the rats might be, but I don't know. It may make people feel good to see a sign go up, but I don't think it's amounting to any impact.
After this discussion, to understand what we do and certainly our limitations, it could inform how we educate around pet waste issues. If we have a concentration of complaints at a particular area, that might be an area where you have some communication and education with residents about what they should and should not be doing. But it isn't really going to drive enforcement.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
And then there's several recommendations for the Office of Clean City around developing and coordinating public awareness campaigns at the different agencies around proper trash storage and removal. So we have different messaging from different agencies that we would like to align. Also, a proposal to reboot the Adopt a Block program and develop, coordinate and develop a citywide anti-litter campaign. And then also move to more proactively abate rodents through the predictive algorithm and considering a footprint strategy for DOH. And then the last set is for within 60 days to work with DCHR to develop the cross-trained PD for rodent control and code enforcement, although DOH may already be moving faster on that. For Clean City to develop an overall sanitation strategy for the district that looks at residential, commercial, and public litter cans, obviously in close coordination with DPW. To consider any needed changes to sanitation regulations, including those that impact small multifamily residences and commercial businesses. We already talked about the modernized code enforcement and rodent control tracking system, and then restarting that grant program for compactors through DSLBD that seems to have been very popular with small businesses.
Okay. Last thoughts? Any last thoughts on?
I have one question for Dr. Heinsohn. So you just heard us walk through a number of different recommendations. You offered some that aren't here. When you look across the recommendations, given your expertise, what would you advise we might see the biggest impact if we were really to, while we can do all of them, to sort of highlight one for us that you think we'd have the biggest impact?
Education is the biggest impact, probably, in all areas. Then after that, well, I heard you say that you can't distribute trash cans, but
not 200,000.
well, but if you notice the picture with the plastic trash cans and you see all the holes not in them,
those are the ones we want to go after first.
right? But is there not a trash can out there that is metal that would not be gnawable?
Not that I have ever seen municipally used, but I'm going to ask have you seen
Because
such
then
a
you would have
can?
to get 200,000. But I see that everywhere I go in this city.
Yeah, I've never in many cities, in the cities I've been in, this is the fifth, I've not seen a can that isn't this kind of material for municipal family household use.
Right.
But we could continue to look to see if there's a line
and I don't
or
know
something.
either.
Yeah. That's a challenge for us. That'll insert some.
The only other point I wanted to make was there's an enormous amount of development that's going on in the city. As these buildings get built and the big holes get dug, the rodents are being pushed out of those areas into the residential areas. If there's some approach to be able to, as that starts, to be able to cover a broader area to attack them when they're being pushed out of their burrows, it might be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Moving the sewer through the sewers also.
Right. So sewers, and we didn't talk too much about development, but it is a part of, I know DCRA's, and when all of the permits are issued to have road and abatement programs. So we'll make sure that's on the line too. So a couple of takeaways. We want to continue to talk about enhancement of our staff, public education for our residents and business owners, introducing dry ice as another tool to help. And I think we should talk about a more robust kind of the public education and marketing around this, and how often and how effective it is. And also, we didn't get to talk about kind of a government response, not just finding people, but actually abating if we know that we have a trash problem, and then going back and dealing with the property owners later. But that's certainly on there. And so there were some ideas that came from our bid team. So let me thank you for participating. Our associations, thank you for participating. And our ANC commissioners, thank you for participating. And Dr. Heinsohn, thank you also for being with us today. So I expect that we will convene again. So we have a program here that is 30, 60, and 90 days out. So I expect that we'll convene again to talk about our progress. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.